You're supposed to say hello.
Oh, hello. Welcome to the Circle of Dads, the space for sharing stories about the struggles and triumphs of fatherhood and learning to become better men.
That has been doing my program, literally has been doing Poserkids since the very first school we ever went to, downtown Fort Worth, Sundance Montessori. And he was 3 at the time. And he came up, and I think it was actually at a camp that Abby was at too, your daughter. And Preston comes up to me, and in the morning, we kind of are playing Legos and just kind of waiting for, parents like you to drop off the kids and get going. And playing music always, kind of get things going in the morning. Preston comes up to me. He's like, Mr. Mateo, you play really girly music. And just kind of walked off. And I was like, I think we as fathers of girls, I think we what a great sort of softening rounding of the edges that we go through, I think, and are blessed to go through as dads, specifically girl dads. I think that feminine side, and it's super cool to see. Like, so here's this mini barbarian, very masculine, strong guy and then just to see the softy that you've always been with your daughter. It's what a perfect example.
Yeah, I do know, and it's funny you say about the music, because there was music that I would just completely roll my eyes at before. I'm like, oh God, that is terrible. Yeah. There is music still that I think is just completely and absolutely ridiculous. But if Justin Bieber songs come on now, they're burned in my brain.
No shame,
and
no shame there.
None at all. It's a freaking dance party in our truck. I mean, that's what Abby and I do on the way to school. We dance, we sing, we listen to music. I mean, I never wanted to be, because I've been in car rides with that, like with just certain older men, whoever it may have been.
Old guys.
Yeah, grandfather or uncle, and the music is like on AM, just to where you can barely hear it, and you can hear the blinker tick, 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 tick.
And it's like just Don Imus in the background.
Yeah,
talking about Korea.
It's
or
just
something.
this imminent boredom. Like, that whatever you're gonna do, it's gonna suck. And so with her, when we go to school and stuff, I try to rile her up because she's also a 12-year-old girl. 12-year-old girls they're on a roller coaster that they didn't buy a ticket for. You know what I'm saying? And they don't know what to do. And that's partially why I started doing this kind of stuff like we talked earlier. One of the other reasons is, let me back up. So Abby and I were driving down the road one day, right? And it's 2 years ago because she just turned 12. And we were out by her house, and so there's a lot of, it's real rural, and she was having a hard time. And we were talking about some stuff. And I just stopped and pulled over on the side of the road. And we watched the sun go down over these trees. We were at the, top of a hill. It was a great view. And we're talking, and she's telling me something, I can't even remember what it was. And I finally just looked at her and I was like, look, man, you don't know how to be 10 years old, and I don't know how to raise a 10-year-old. So, we're both sucking together. Let's just get through this.
Full disclosure.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm doing. You don't know what you're doing. Let's go figure it out together.
We're in it together.
So what a great starting point, because isn't that the parent-child relationship in a nutshell, Ryan?
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm doing. You don't know what you're doing. Let's go feel it out together. And I think that is actually a fun place to be, and as someone that really loves the spontaneity and improvisation that life offers, and really taking advantage of that. What a special place to be with. Really, children embody that very spirit of possibility, of yes, of I can. And it's amazing how grown-ups and becoming a grown-up kind of
Snuffs all that out.
snuffs it out, you know? And I think one of the great tragedies is, like you're saying, kids not knowing how to be kids, grown-ups not knowing how to be grown-ups a lot of the time. And case in point, you know, I think I'm the embodiment for that methodology. But I think one of the great ironies of this glorious communications age that we reside in is people don't know how to communicate anymore. Not interpersonally, not with depth and with substance and on a very personal level. In other words, when your daughter and my daughter, when it's prom time here in a few years, I don't know if a young man's going to be able to walk up to them and say, "Hey, Grayson, you're beautiful. Can I buy you a soda? Would you like to go to prom with me?" I think it's going to have to be like something via Snapchat or like an emoji or something.
An
like
Evite.
Will you go to prom with me Instagram post with that person tagged? Grayson will be tagged on that post. But, you know, it's almost and this is coming from someone that's been divorced twice.
Sure.
But, you know, I kid with my married friends often about, you know, this family circus type little comic, little cartoon that is a married couple lying in bed together and they're texting each other. They're snapping each other. They're sending each other Instagram messages because they don't know how to just turn over, look at each other and talk. Yeah,
Absolutely.
And it's a legacy we are unfortunately passing down to our children where, you know, this digital age we're in is truly, I mean, it makes the Renaissance look like real ho-hum, but there's always a you know, two sides to every coin. And, you know, the dark underbelly of this communications age is I really believe that people don't know how to communicate anymore. And I see it in grown-ups. I see it in kids. So anywho,
Yeah.
good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, sir. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Here we are with Mateo Marquez of Poserkids Yoga, author, poet, warlord, entrepreneur, yoga teacher, divorcee, dad, TCU graduate. Is that where you went to school?
Yeah. Long ago. Oof. I just turned 40 the other day, so I've been going through that whole I'm old thing here the last few weeks. But yeah, TCU long ago, class of 2000. Grew up in Albuquerque and got recruited to play soccer here, and kind of the rest is history. Been in the Dallas-Fort Worth area for 20 years now. 22. Yikes. 22 years since 96.
Okay. And
So I'm a Texan, whether I like it or not. I think I've truly
earned your...
My Texas tenure has surpassed my time in Albuquerque, New Mexico growing up, and I think I'm officially a Texan now, y'all.
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 You know, I don't actually know anybody that says y'all. Yeah, so anyway, so the reason I had you on here is because, well, you're an interesting guy, and I think that you have a good story to share.
Yeah.
And I think what you do with kids is remarkable. I think showing them how to play, showing them how to be kids, showing them how to be mindful, and, you know, just getting them into the practice of yoga. I don't see how that could harm a child. You know what I'm saying? It's one of those things that, like, you're doing nothing but good as far as that goes. So why don't you tell me briefly about that, or not so briefly, however you want to go about it. Just tell me what brought you to the point to where you wanted to do that.
Yeah. You know, I did the whole post-collegiate, go be a corporate guy, put on a tie. I did all through my 20s, and I was really good at it, and made a lot of money, and you know, built this success story, at least even in my own head, or you know, aligned with sort of the almost the cliche of what are you supposed to do after college? I did the whole
Checking the boxes.
Yeah, get married too young, 22. There should be a state law that men should not be allowed to be married. It should be similar to like drinking laws or gambling or anything. There should be like an age requirement. I mean, there should be like 29 or something that like, what did I know about life as a 22-year-old, let alone making a life commitment. So,
they should at least check your credit score.
At least they should at least carded me something, but, got married, did the whole move to Dallas thing. And yeah, just kind of the more I, built this Rome, the more predestined it seemed to come crashing down, as it did. And I wrote this book really about the crash, and not so much the recovery, but really just kind of the
shit show.
How do you stand up? Let's start with just like, how do you stand up in the middle of this smoking chasmic abyss, that we go through in life. We're constantly going through this cycle of fly, crash, burn, rise, fly again through work stuff, personal stuff, parenting stuff, etc. And I went through one that was pretty seismic and was actually served divorce papers on the morning of my 30th birthday, which my first ex-wife found fairly humorous at the time. I did not. And, I moved back to Fort Worth to be closer to my sister and kind of start rebuilding. And my sister, as you know, because your wife worked for Kelsey at Lululemon, my sister has always been a very well-respected yoga person in this community here in Fort Worth, Texas, and just respected in every level. My sister's just a very special person.
She's pretty top notch.
Kelsey's pretty unique. And Kelsey started dragging me to yoga classes. And honestly, at first it was, after me saying no 100 times, like yoga is like the last thing in the world I want to do. And honestly, I'm probably the last person on the planet that would ever do yoga. And, she's like, well, it's mostly women and, they're in stretch pants. And, I was like, sure, I'll try yoga. It's
all about the pitch.
Newly divorced guy and whatever. And she took me to a Kundalini yoga class, which is very yoga, and it's honestly, yoga people will appreciate this. Of all the first yoga class ever to go to, Kundalini yoga is the last one that you should ever go to. And it was, she's got us parked in the front row and whatever. And I'm like,
wearing a
Gumby t-shirt and like, whatever, like fish out of water, totally. And, the teacher kept saying, breathe through your groin. Everyone, close your eyes, breathe through your groin. And he kept saying this. And I was like snickering, trying to keep it together in this first yoga class next to my sister, who's very revered in this yoga community. And here's her older brother that like can't even keep it together because the guy keeps
breathing through your dick.
Breathe through your groin. Yeah,
absolutely.
And I didn't even know what that meant. And I remember spending most of the class trying to actually figure out how to breathe through your groin in different ways. And anyways, by the end of the class, though, I felt really good. And as someone that has always struggled with, I think, like all humans, I want to feel good, and seeking a lot of other ways, not the healthiest ways at times, to feel good. I felt good, and it was natural. I didn't consume any substances. I wasn't doing anything illegal. I just felt good, and I was there with my sister, and it was a complete disaster. The class, as far as my experience from like a yoga evaluation level, I was a train wreck. But you know what? I go take yoga classes still daily, and I'm still a train wreck in yoga. And I think I found something right from that first class that was very different for me. And what has emerged in the 7 years since, or really evolved in so many ways through so much trial and error and failure. And honestly, I think failure and success, if there's anything I've learned in life, are so hand in hand. You can't have one without the other. And I think yoga and Eastern philosophy in general does a better job of embracing reality. It's not all berries and unicorns all the time. And I think, kids stuff is the worst at being very patronizing, very rose-colored glasses, very, hey, life's great and whatever. Our kids are too smart for that, especially these kids these days, like Grayson and Abby. I mean, they're way too smart for that.
Plus, they have access to the truth 24/7.
They can go validate it on Google or Amazon or YouTube, or ask Jake Paul what he thinks about it. And who we met the other night, which was a really cool experience. But
sure,
Jake Paulers out there. My place in yoga and what Poserkids Yoga and Poserkids as an organization and a program has become is really kind of focusing on this yoga of life. What are the poses that matter? I don't care, honestly, if a child in one of our yoga classes or watching one of our videos on Prime, I don't care if they can touch their toes really well. I want to know what's going to happen when someone pushes them over on the playground and they dust themselves off and stand back up. Then what? What are you going to do? The poses that matter, navigating through your life, and the very poser sort of analogy is almost kind of tongue-in-cheek to a group of people, the yoga people, I always call them, and always not as one of them, but I think yoga and a lot of the health and wellness community, we take ourselves a little too seriously as grown-ups in general, and I think like anything in the West, we kind of get a hold of something really good and kind of butcher it and Americanize it and mutilate it. And I think that's kind of what's happened in American yoga. And so I think what's refreshing about Poserkids, and whether it's a book that your sister-in-law illustrates our Poserkids book series, again, a video, a class, whatever, I hope the message that is received is, how are you going to live your life? How are you going to live a better life? And if breathing and learning to self-soothe in healthy, natural ways, and learning some strategies and tactics to navigate through life, hopefully then that child doesn't have to turn to all the other things that you and I have turned to try to get that feeling. Mm-hmm. It didn't work. It never stays. It never sticks. And we're in a great danger right now as a society of completely losing a generation. I mean, the disconnect of losing yourself in this virtual reality and just an inability to really feel. People don't want to feel. I never wanted to feel. It's okay to feel your way through this stuff. Think as little as possible. And, 95% of the world and Americans are still not yoga people. They're not wearing mala beads. They're not going to yoga class every day and talking Sanskrit and, wearing their stretch pants and drinking kale smoothies or whatever, especially kids, And so what we've become is, I think, really just a message of go try to lead a better life. And I think kids are great mirrors for grownups. Sort of in their reflection, I think we see the best in ourselves as well. And I always tell anyone, if you ever want to go feel better yourself, go spend some time with kids. It's really become, I think, everything a convergence of everything that I am, everything I've ever done in my life, has sort of come together in this Poserkids entity now, and it's given me a great opportunity to truly do what I love, which is just be myself and help people. And myself is really kind of a large child, and being a kid is easy for me. Being with kids is easy for me. The grown-ups, still working on that. Kids I get.
Grown-ups not so well.
Still working on that one. But yeah, that's what Poserkids has become. All of our content and stuff is all on Amazon. And so we're really excited now as an organization about taking those next steps and really, I've always wanted to reach as many people with this message, with this flavor of how we make heartfulness, I really call it, because I think mindfulness is a misnomer, because as you know, as popular as that term has become, and I think it's a fine term, but our brain is a lot of the problem. So I like to call it heartfulness, kind of heart first, leading with your heart. And I think heartfulness is a better word for what we teach to children and families, and now have a vehicle through the Amazon platform to share that message really globally and instantaneously. Any child, anytime, anywhere can go to Amazon Prime, watch one of our videos, do some poses, get a simple message about, hey, go do something positive and good and help people. And that's the yoga that I hope people grasp, and I hope people learn and practice from us.
Excellent. Where on Amazon can they find you? What's this under?
Yeah, just Poserkids,
Okay.
and we're on Prime. The show's on Prime Video. We have actually a main show that's kind of like our Seinfeld. Me doing yoga with Pat Green, or yoga at Joe T's, or doing down dogs with dogs, and we shot the whole first season here in Fort Worth. So there's a lot of cool people, places, things that people in the area will, I think, really appreciate our video content. We have books that are an adaptation, a children's book, great for early readers, that your sister-in-law, Suzanne Watson, illustrates, that are adaptations of each of those main videos on Prime. We have a lot of ancillary content on YouTube. And then we have music downloads on all the music platforms, and our theme song, actually, when I go and teach this program to predominantly educators, school teachers, clinicians, counselors, etc., our little theme song, Abby would come home whistling, and you'd be like, stop singing that pose. We make yoga poses. We're Poserkids. If I hear that one more time, that's actually our yoga sequence embedded in a theme song, which makes it not only easier to teach, but easier to retain as a student. And it's really cool. You go to a Poserkids thing where a 3-year-old even that's taken one of our classes a couple times, they know the poses before we even call them. And so I hate to use Bikram Chowdhury as an example, because he's literally one of the creepiest guys in not just yoga, but on earth. But similar to you take a Bikram class anywhere, it's the same 26 poses everywhere. And it's really contrary to just the essence of my being. That's like against everything I believe. Do the same thing every time. But I found that's what I crave in my own practice. I crave consistency, repetition, routine. Children, times 100. Children are creatures of routine and regimen, and especially whether they like it or not, we get them into that as the grown-ups in their lives.
They crave it.
And so I think there are a lot of little neat things from a yoga standpoint, from a clinical integrity, from an early childhood integrity, and just a straight entertainment value that I think a lot of people underestimate, because they just see this spiky-haired guy in jeans and boots doing yoga at the dentist, and they're like, what does this have to do with yoga or anything? What is this? And I think the practicality of making this just, yoga's how you live your life. I think it's a powerful message for children and grown-ups alike, and just feel very blessed, despite, as 40 years now of a lot of ups, downs, and sideways. Just feel very blessed to be in the position to share that message with people, and have I feel like a vehicle now through one of the largest online platforms on the planet to share that with as many people as possible. So I'm excited about that, Ryan.
Sure. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the ups, downs, and the sideways that have brought you here.
Sure.
And, because I've known you for 8 years, 7 years, something like that. And, I've seen a lot of it. I mean, anybody that knows you has watched it. And one thing I can always say for you is you do always rise to the top. I mean, you don't stay down for long. And that's definitely respectable. I mean, a lot of guys would just go through some of the things you went through and just bail, or, just kind of just assume that it wasn't meant to be. But you stay persistent. Your message stays consistent, that you're all about the kids and you're all about teaching them, just the better way of living. And,
Sure.
And so in doing that, has that changed the way that you live your life?
Yeah.
And also, I know with me, for instance, like this podcast, I started this because I want to help dads, uncles, stepbrother, anybody that's in a kid's life that has an influence on them. I want to help them learn ways to just help these kids become better children, and not just be the kids that are sitting in the corner on their tablet that don't even know how to label an emotion, and also there's those dads out there that go through hellacious events, that go through divorces, that get just completely beat down with in child support cases and possessions, and they don't know how to do those things. Those are some of the catalysts. Those are some of the things that brought me to this. And so what I would want to know is how have all of those things shaped you to where it brings you to where you are today? And did you get into this realm kind of also to help yourself? Like because I honestly, like with this, I know I'm a knucklehead. So if I surround myself with enough of these guys that have the experience on how to be better fathers and better dads, then I'll absorb some of that.
At the end of the day, I think if you were to ask me one thing, what are you teaching children? What does Poserkids do? I would not probably give the answer that you would expect. We teach kids yoga. We're teaching kids yoga poses. What we're teaching is acceptance. We have a little mantra, a little pledge we do at the beginning. Every video, every class, everything Poserkids we do, that I wanted something very agnostic that was like a set of core values, pillars to really fall back on, that any child, anytime, anywhere could truly identify with, was very inclusive, and was very much about acceptance and real acceptance from the inside out, starting with yourself. I promise to listen. I promise to be respectful, to do my best, and to have fun. Simple. 4 simple tenets that are not just a great way to manage the chaos of a 30-minute stretch class with 4 and 5-year-olds, but it's a great way to live your life. I wanted something like one of my friends and favorite authors, Don Miguel Ruiz, has a book called The 4 Agreements. And, he's got these 4 agreements: be impeccable with your word, don't make assumptions, don't take things personally, and always do your best. I wanted something similar to that was simple, that kids could get their minds around, that was just, hey, what is the yoga then that we're teaching? Is how do you listen, be respectful, do your best, and have fun practicing in that class? But then how do you go take that into your lives, kid? And oh, by the way, grown-ups. And oh, by the way, me as your teacher, I'm working on this every day, same as you are. I'm real about that. I'm not some guru. I haven't figured any of this stuff out yet myself either. I'm right there with you. And so I think, how has it changed my life? It's become my life, and as you know, I've struggled in the past with my own ego, my own narcissism, my own alcoholism, my own personality flaws and defects and neuroses. I have succumbed to those things in the past, and I've had to pose my way through a lot of crazy stuff, hard stuff, difficult stuff that makes, holding your leg up in a certain way for a few minutes in a sweaty room seem simple. Here's a pose. What happens when you're in the middle of divorce number 2 and you're holding your stillborn son in your arms? Looks just like you. And you had to go through hoops to even get to meet the kid because of the nature of the divorce proceedings you're in. That was a tough pose. That was one of the hardest poses I ever did. And something that I've drawn a lot of parallel to the recovery world. In what will be 5 years of not drinking coming up here this September, that I am very proud of, just in how I've been able to maintain my sobriety.
You should be.
And something that is a real core tenet of, recovery circles is acceptance as well. It is starting with yourself. And I think at the end of the day, there's two things that any of us can control. And ironically, it's an A and an A. This is not an AA endorsement, but they ironically are an A and an A. And I think our attitudes and our actions at the end of the day are the only two things any of us can control. And we spend our lives obsessing about all the other things and trying to control them. And you know what? We try the most to control are other people in our lives. And I've been as guilty as this as anybody. And I think, letting go of that is powerful. I think a lot of what my practice, and again, more than what I do for, 60 minutes in a sweaty room when I go take a grown-up yoga class somewhere, my practice of just navigating through life has become about acceptance and has become really about dominating my attitude and my actions and just focusing on those two things and just like dominating them, literally dominating those two areas of my life. Everything else I've grown to accept. I've grown to accept my son passing away, as hard as that was, and another brutal divorce that I was not a fan of a lot of the things that happened, if not all of the things that happened during that. I could be a real angry, resentful guy. You know what I was doing while jumping through court appearances and talking to lawyers and stuff? We'd go film a Poserkids video, or I'd go do an assembly the morning after my son passed away, Eli, who would have been 2 last weekend. The morning after, I went and did 6 assemblies at 6 of the most poverty-stricken public elementary schools in all of Fort Worth. And I remember doing it with the junior league and I remember my own people are like, you're nuts. You need to stay home today. And to me, to this day, in 7 years of yoga stuff and poser stuff and what's become this Poserkids program and hopefully way of being, one of my proudest moments was getting to walk the talk that day. And one of my biggest beefs with the world, if you will, these days, is much of an old guy, is that kids these days, and as old as that makes me sound, I think one of the great ironies of the communication age is that no one knows how to communicate anymore. And I think that people don't want to feel. And I think that everyone has a platform to say stuff. Very few people do anything. There's not a lot of doing these days. And, I've had, how much time do we have? You'll have to corral me a little bit more if you want to talk about some specific, seismic events. I've written books about a couple of them, but I think that that's just life.
Yeah.
And if there's any gift that we can give children is, I think, transparency, honesty, some of these things that we struggle with more than anything, just as grown-ups, even, especially with ourselves. Mm-hmm. And I think it's very liberating, and even in embracing some of the vulnerability and some of the ugliness of that, I think there's just a great peace and a great beauty with being real about it. If some people in this town probably want to hit me with their car when they see me out crossing Hewlin. But there's a lot of people too that will stop, roll down the window, their kids will hop out, we'll do a little pose together that'll show up on Instagram, right. and I give them a hug, and it's
sure.
So you gotta. You got to be ready for a little of both. But yeah, I think failure and success go hand in hand. I've failed more than about any now 40-year-old male that I know in every way possible, personally and professionally. But I've also done a lot of things, and hopefully more than just doing, have become something. You asked me, how has this changed the way I live my life? It is my life. And making it where this character of Mr. Mateo, sort of this neo Mr. Rogers meets Seinfeld with a YouTube account kind of thing. Blurring that line where it's the same man. That's just who I am. That took me a while to get there, because it would be, this guy's doing kids yoga, family yoga class in Trinity Park on Saturday morning. That guy was hammered at Fred's last night.
Right.
And really getting to the point where I was not cannibalizing the work I was doing. And I still, you and I talked about a little bit about this morning. Perception is reality. Mm-hmm. And it's propagated even more so by the digital world we live in, that is so superficial and about appearances and really lacks substance. I think a lot of people just see me or Poserkids or whatever, and this 40-year-old spiky-haired skunk patch guy doing yoga poses like, at Joe T. Garcia's with boots on and jeans, and it doesn't look like what children's stuff or yoga stuff should look like. If you get a little deeper, it's pretty clever, pretty sharp, pretty powerful stuff we're doing. And I don't know, you tell me, your daughter has been to as much poser stuff as anybody. She's kind of grown beyond our preschool, elementary age, kind of that early childhood. She's now graduated, into something else. My hope with Poserkids is not that we corral them into yoga or quinoa eating or any specific, life path, but they're just that we teach them to value listening, being respectful, doing your best, and having fun in life. If that's yoga, if that's CrossFit, if that's bar, if that's taking walks, if it's fitness is even only a small part of it, the physical fitness, great. Hopefully you've graduated on to some, better place as a result of being immersed in our program.
Sure.
That values, to me, what is the good stuff of life.
Did you just say quinoa?
Whatever it's, my daughter eats that stuff.
Quinoa?
Yeah, quinoa. But that's so that
I was just making sure I heard that right.
But that is the very essence. So I'm not one of those hardcore yoga people.
Sure.
But I think that's what's always been my opportunity in the yoga space, in the wellness space, working with children, working with families, is I think someone like you that is just, and I say that endearingly, that's just like, you're not wearing Lululemon stuff and some tank top right now and ready to go skip out and go to like a smart bar class right now or whatever. You're just a dude with a beard and tats and whatever. Hopefully you may get aboard with, if I'm going to do yoga with my daughter, I'll do it in the living room on Amazon. And I'll do yoga with Pat Green. Sounds kind of interesting to me, so I don't know. As Abby was immersed in the Poserkids program through camps and classes, and has any of that stuck with her?
Yeah, I can see, but also she's 12 and
Sure.
she's super ADD and things change, So when she was in that space, I could most certainly see how it would transfer over.
And she has a wooden rooster that I gave her as a gift, right? Okay.
And she loves it.
It's missing a wing, isn't it? Isn't it like a wingless?
I think so.
Or it's missing a leg or something.
I know that it's
type of amputee rooster.
It's away with the elf. The elf on a shelf. They come out together. And so, but I know, like with Abby, you were talking about the attitudes and actions. Yeah. The one thing that I constantly tell her all the time is, for one, it's none of our business what other people think of us. And there is absolutely nothing you can do to control what other people do. You can only control how you react to it.
Sure.
And you're responsible for your actions. I've got a mantra that I made for her, and I printed it out, and it's now I'm in control of my feelings, my thoughts and my actions. I'm beautiful, I'm kind, I'm enough. And it's printed out, and it's on the wall here, and it's on the wall at her mom's house, because I want her to continue to hear those things. And, you know, she's a great kid. I mean, she's sweet and fun. She has trouble with her peers because it's just that relating. But like other kids, like smaller kids, she's great with. Adults, she's great with. But she's, you know, at 12, it's hard. I was never a 12-year-old girl, but I do know that now I can see it. Being a 12-year-old little girl is difficult. There's a lot of stuff she's going through. And so I'm constantly trying to remind her, to teach her, to show her how to gracefully kind of navigate through feelings, thoughts, and emotions with your actions. Like if you're angry, if you're upset, if you're scared, if you're fearful, you know, I was always taught kids display anger for emotions they don't have words for. I think is what it was. And so
grown-ups do the same thing.
Oh yeah. I mean, you can see it with grown men.
Absolutely.
Like they get mad, they get frustrated, they get embarrassed, and they start getting angry. You know,
I see it with women more often, but I think I provoke that. But yes, I agree.
That might be. And you know, that's another thing I was going to say is like, you know, you and I are both polarizing characters. Like I never really even knew what that meant until my wife informed me that I was a polarizing guy. And you know, I mean, it's either people are going to love you or hate you. Nobody. You bring up Mateo or, you know, Ryan, and if they know us, nobody's going to have a meh. It's either going to be like, oh man, I love that guy, or that fucking guy.
You know, but it's funny you say that, because my own mother, like to this day, will say that. You know, people love my son or they hate him. You know, and she's like, there's no middle ground. And you know what? I think there's some saying. You know, as we're always throwing out these sayings. You know, like he who has no enemies is likely to be in the same regard to friends. And, you know, and I think you've got to, it was the old George Strait song, you got to stand for something or you fall for anything. Clint Black, I think George Strait, but I get my country western mixed up every now and then, but I do think that, you know, the while I've learned to appreciate that most of life is in gray areas, you know,
absolutely,
and not just 50 Shades, but you know, I'm a big Deadhead, and you know, it's like the song "Touch of Gray." You know, every silver lining's got a touch of gray, and I think more and more you can. It's again, it's a slippery slope. I think there's a lot of people that are just this moderacy, this like wishy-washiness of nobody wanting to pick a side it's just become a pandemic. It's just like how people roll, you know, not just in their political leanings, but in everything. You know, nobody wants to put themselves out there. And I think what you find it's not an extremism or an absolutism. It's quite the opposite. It's just more, it's an acceptance of the good, the bad, the black, the white, the wholeness of things that is very yogic. And I think at the end of the day, a lot of it boils down to managing reactivity. You know, if you think about it, where we exist in this digital age, that really our phones are like these leashes that we're on. And one of the great, ironically, as I mentioned that, one of the great takeaways and cathartic moments of spending a month in rehab where I quit drinking was you also have no digital connect to the world, and just the catharses of coming out a month later and of like a bajillion Facebooks and texts and voicemails and whatever, like 2 were important. You know, 2 were really even anything I needed to attend to after a month. I remember being like, dear God, you know, as Facebook was king at the time. What are people gonna do without the daily, like, here's Mateo, like, eating a piece of bread post? Like, people are going to die. You know, just my ego, my narcissism, you know, and that side of me that still exists. I don't try to let it pop up as much, but there's this myth that people change. People don't change. You are what you are. What changes are your attitudes and your actions. That's it. I'm still the same person I was when I was 5, when I was 25, when I was 35. But it's just choosing which part of that, you know, yin, yang, black, white, which part of that are you going to expose? I still am an egotist. in a lot of ways. I still am a narcissist. I still am a drunk at my worst. But at my best, I'm quite the converse of all those things. And I choose this wonderful gift of choice that all humans have. It's one of our greatest gifts, God-given gifts, that I choose to go right instead of left a lot. Usually I go left, but that's just how. But I think what we're talking about, a lot of this is managing reactivity. And my mentor, my yoga mentor, who's become one of my really good friends, a guy named Brian Kest, who's in Santa Monica. And, he always talks about this world of reactivity, constantly responding to all the dings and buzzes and tweets and texts and whatever. We're constantly reacting. And for people like, not just me, as a ADD, impulsive, compulsive, manic personality type, sounds like Abby is similar to that in a lot of ways. She's managing that same reactivity as well. And kids don't always do what we say. In fact, more and more, my daughter doesn't do what I say, but they do what we do. Absolutely. Almost always. And so it's like modeling the way. And I think for dads, the parental thing is a learned skill. I think maternal instinct, my daughter, since she's been like 6 months old, has 12 months old, whatever, with their, little girls are playing mom and they're dressing up the babies, and the maternal instinct is very natural. I know 7-year-olds that know what they want to wear for their wedding, who they're going to marry, where it's going to be. What their kids are going to be named. They're 7. And they're telling me this in a yoga class.
Boys don't do that.
Boys don't do that. Men were programmed to hunt and gather and provide and be tough.
And protect.
And have no feelings or emotions, or at least not show any kind of vulnerability or humanity a lot of the time.
We're taught that.
We're modeled that by society or, whatever that is. And I think men...
You don't have any 7-year-olds out there telling their G.I. Joes to get a job and go to college.
No. You gotta be... Your rents due, G.I. Joe.
Get up, you bum.
Yeah, get up. Go work. So we're wired differently, but I think that becoming a parent for a male, is perhaps one of the most life-changing, if not the most life-altering event that I've experienced myself. And we were talking as girl dads.
Yeah.
In particular, nothing wrong with the boy dads out there, but there is in particular for a guy like me that has spent the better part of my life trying to figure out the opposite sex, trying to figure out females, to be given almost a little mentor that now in 10 years has kind of slowly, piece by piece, is teaching me how to treat women, how to talk to women, how to respect women, how to interact with women, how to be honest with women. I'm learning that from a 10-year-old.
I absolutely agree, man, because, with it...
Thank God.
Right? But, whatever guy you are is typically the guy that she's going to marry. So you need to emulate the type of man that you want to be your son-in-law or your daughter-in-law. Whatever, whether she marries a man or a woman, you want that type of person. You want to be the type of person that you would want to see as her spouse. Those qualities you have, those, just whatever the attributes they are, that's a hard thing. I know a lot of guys that think they can slip by with that, and they do some shady shit. And it's like, would you hand your phone to your daughter and let her just flip through? There's some stuff between my wife and I that I wouldn't want her to see, obviously. Sure. But I have to be very careful at what I look at, what kind of things I'm involved in, like what's on my feed. Because even certain pages that you like if you liked a page, whatever it may be, 3 years ago and you forgot about it and it pops back up on your feed, sure, and she sees it, she's going to think that that's okay in your eyes. And that kind of stuff, for a daughter, that's super important, I think, as men, is that we need to kind of step it up with how we are. And, they talk about chivalry and things like that are dead, but I disagree. I think that they're not required as often. So for my daughter and my wife, it's the things like opening the door.
Absolutely.
And
it's cool you said that, because I was just writing down, talking about opening doors. My first ex-wife, who, you would, either of my ex-wives would probably, not right off the bat would be necessarily singing all my wonderful praises unprompted, like many ex-spouses. That's, the nature of the beast. That's not an indictment on me nor them, but
it's the reason they're your exes.
there you go. I know the first one still comments to my daughter about how I open doors and how she misses that, and little thing, like I always open the door for my daughter. And I see people that don't, like, I'll see some dude like on a date with some great looking female, and they don't open doors. It bugs me to the point where I want to go over there. Not just because it's a great looking female that, hey, come over,
I'll open your door.
My car, I'll open the door. But there's a little part of it, but it really irks me. And I think just basic manners, something I see that is really, and it's, it's like there's no bad kids. There are some parents that need some work, and that kind of shows up sometimes, I think, with the temperament or the behaviors of the children. But basic manners, please, thank you,
yes sir,
yes ma'am, yes sir.
Look people in the eye, learn how to shake a hand.
Look people in the eye, and you said something about how it's you kind of are attracted to someone, not in like an Oedipal complex kind of way, but like as a man, we are drawn to people that kind of remind us of our mothers, and as a lady, we're drawn to people that kind of remind us of our dads. That used to scare the crap out of me. If you would have told me that, I would have been like, dear God, the thought of Grayson ended up with someone like me scared the crap out of me. Now, honestly, I would love that. I would love it if Grace ended up with someone like me. I would love it, and I can honestly tell you that doesn't scare the crap out of me. I hope she ends up with someone like me, and that's been a real transition. The self-loathing, the self-deprecation, the not liking myself, not accepting myself, despite a massive facade that you've seen at its worst of just this big, boisterous, confident, whatever, that frailty and vulnerability and insecurity that I've also never shied away from sharing with people. I think at the end of the day, for whatever's wrong with me or whatever work I continue to need to have in my personal life, and then can model through my own experiences and my own behaviors for people, like starting with my daughter first and foremost, being transparent about that. And I've found that when you put out there, oh, hey, I used to drink a ton and I don't anymore. I used to, you hear, I still cuss like a sailor. I haven't said a single bad word on this whole podcast yet.
Which it's okay.
And you have, and that's okay. But I'm just saying, like, that's a big deal for me. That's some work. Oh my gosh, oh my gatos, as Eduardo Carocchio, our character from PKY TV News, that I actually based on Triumph, the insult comic dog, that you can watch on the Poser Pulse, and he does a lot of feet on the street interviews, asking kids about meditation or breathing or things like that. Eduardo is great. But
this fucking guy.
But yeah, just something little like that, or something little like being able to tell my daughter and talk with her openly and honestly about drinking, or about some of these things that it becomes ingratiating. You put yourself out there. Hey, I've done this, I've done that. Here's an Instagram post about this. And sure, you're going to alienate a few people. You're going to really turn a few people off. But I think it's always, to me, it's a no-brainer, because it's worth it for the people that it really ingratiates. You know what? I drink too much. I'd love to stop. I am not honest with my wife. I'm unfaithful. I'm work obsessed, and my family, my wife and my kids suffer. I like to, there's nothing more gratifying for me, to the point where I've given away so many books and yoga classes and time and whatever over the past decade. I don't need a medal for that. I'm not looking for, compensation for that or anything, but, there is nothing more more rewarding for me on a personal level than to see how you've reached someone, you've connected with someone, that connection that you talk about that people struggle with, finding their connection, finding their ability to relate. And if there's something that I do hear over and over again, a lot of times, even from people that they may not even like me personally necessarily, but they respect, I think, the transparency and the realness of it. I don't pretend to be something that I'm not, which is some chiseled, transcendent guru of how to, live this perfect life. First of all, that's a myth. And second of all, I would be the last person on the planet that you would want to pick for a spokesperson for that. If you want to talk to someone about how to not like jump off the top of the bass hall, and how to pose your way through some icky stuff and breathe and meditate or come to a place of acceptance with who you are and where you are as a husband, as a father, as an ex-husband, as a just a person. I'd love to talk with you about that, 'cause and it's more real, and it's why through the ups and downs and sideways, it's interesting. You see different sets of people on the way up and on the way down.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been something of a roller coaster. I'm working on that. I'd love to be more like my sister, very, very equilibrium, very yoga, right? Very, very balanced. And I think as much as anything, this balance, this life balance is a myth. It's really how do we best manage the imbalance that is inevitable. And I feel like, something that I do enjoy is the opportunity to have real conversations with people that you see the real people in your life as you audit through change in life, and you get down after a while to like a handful of people that are really kind of your people, your core people. And it's fascinating to see how quickly people gravitate towards you when you're on the way up, when you're hot, when you're whatever, when you're down there, when you're a lot of those people go away. A lot of those people aren't there anymore, and the ones that are there both ways, I encourage anyone, keep those people in your life and to the point of like diligent impunity, like boot anyone else from your life, because I think we give so much power to people, places, and things in our lives that we cede control of our own lives, and we propagate this myth that it looks good on Instagram, but I'm miserable on the inside.
And I see that a lot with people. That what's that deal? I hope my prayer for you is that your life's as good as it appears to be on Instagram.
Yeah, I love that.
But you talked about self-talk and things like that, and I think self-talk is incredibly important, because whatever we tell ourselves eventually is going to start coming out, and then once it starts coming out, your children are going to see that, and then they're going to, if you do something dumb and your response is, God, I'm a stupid son of a bitch, and your kid hears that, then eventually she's going to start doing those behaviors. And so I think as men, and I think as parents, it's our responsibility to make sure that we are constantly trying to improve our emotional well-being.
Sure.
And our awareness. And I know a lot of people that hide from that.
The least of my concerns, there are immense physical benefits to stretching or yoga or any of these, all these trendy workouts. They're all basically, if you really look at them, they're all kind of the same. I know you're a big CrossFit guy. I mean, a burpee and a up dog kind of motion, they're kind of the same thing, so I kind of try to look for the similarities in those things, and honestly, the yoga, the real the real work is, just trying to figure all this stuff out. How do you figure it out? And it's the physicality is the least of my concerns. Kids are very physical and moving around and whatever.
If we are doing our jobs.
Absolutely. Emotional, mental, and spiritual well-being that are just, the source of most of our health issues, honestly, is stress that manifest eventually as physical ailments, start as emotional, mental, and spiritual, hey, straight from the big book, right? Is spiritual malady that is at the core of all this stuff. And honestly, I don't really care about, the physical benefits so much as the emotional, the mental. Those are the parts of my own life, my yoga. I mean, I'm a pretty physically fit guy for 40. I feel like I'm in as good of physical shape as I've ever been in my life, but I'm also in the best mental, emotional, and spiritual place that I've ever been. And honestly, that's in the throes of some not still very adverse circumstance.
Sure.
That not all of which is self-created like it used to be. And coming to that place of acceptance and coming to the place where I value my mental and emotional and even spiritual health, although I have to be careful when I talk about spirituality. I've done a lot to make the Poserkids program very agnostic and very secular, but at the end of the day, stuff like when we talk about acceptance and some of these really core principles, that's a spirituality. It's a being part of something bigger than yourselves. And I think in this me first world, and kids are the ultimate selfish beings. God bless them. That's just how they're wired.
They have to be. To value this thing holistically, this collective, this being a part of something bigger than yourself. Hey, what a great gift we can give our kids as fathers. I think it's as simple as just, be honest. I mean, if there's anything that breaks my daughter's heart, it's when I lie to her. Same way used to break her mother's heart. Yeah.
When I'm honest with her, I really feel like at this point, there's nothing I can tell my 10 going on 14-year-old daughter that is going to break her heart. It's when I don't tell her, or even worse, when she busts me in just a straight lie, and it's just that honesty with yourself first and then on the outside. And I think being a dad is probably the greatest thing that's ever happened to me, and has empowered the opportunity for me to change myself in the only two ways that any of us can: change attitudes and behaviors, attitudes and actions, those two A words we talked about earlier, Ryan. And that's the yoga, that's the practice. And you know what, I'm even this for 60 minutes, whether it was try to go through this yoga class you and I just had and not say anything with an F word in front of it, or, try to be here on time for you, or, whatever.
I didn't set that goal.
It's
obviously.
That's the practice, right? And
Yeah.
being a poser, at the end of the day, the poses, the yoga, how you gonna live your life and try to be the best person you can be.
Absolutely. I think, and you talk about transparency and just being honest with your kids. That's one thing that you can do I would think to ensure that they're always going to come to you and feel like that they can be vulnerable and open and honest to themselves. Like emotionally, I don't bring my daughter through. There's certain things that a child just can't grasp, before 12 years old. Sure. I think I don't take her through any of the emotionals ups and downs of life. But I'm pretty. I kick her the straight deal as much as I can, and I think that she appreciates that, because when she talks to me very real. I don't talk to her necessarily like a child. I talk to her like my friend, or like someone that I'm confiding in. Yeah. And that's strengthened our relationship.
And vulnerability scares the crap out of most people. And
tons of people, yeah.
And everything we do in life, I really believe we do even the most minute little actions, everything we do in our life is out of love or out of fear. It's out of one of those two emotions. And I think that there's great fear in vulnerability, the fear of getting hurt, the fear of being exposed, the fear of, hey, I mean, there's a lot of fear in something you and I maybe talk about in the next 60 minutes. You know, who knows what the repercussions of that might be, good or bad.
Losing something or gaining something, yeah.
But you put yourself out there, and vulnerability to me is the only path to true intimacy with yourself and with other humans. And I think it's why we have a lot of really messed up human relationships out there as grown-ups, but also our relationships with our kids and the children in our lives, because we're so afraid to fail or to get hurt that we put ourselves out there in a real and honest way. And I think that vulnerability is a really special mechanism for finding some of these good things in life, and truly living fearlessly. And what kids are fearless, and something happens as they grow up, and I think they see how we handle fear in our lives as grown-ups is really, and then how we model that for our kids, one of the most important things we do as parents.
Absolutely. Well, right on. Well,
thanks.
I've seen that you give a lot away. I see that you give away books and mats and shirts, and you brought Rooster a shirt and a sticker, and I know that she's going to love that.
Well, good.
I know that you have camps that go on during the summer, correct?
Yes. Well, we're not doing them anymore. We did camps for 5 years, and and I've had a lot of parents. Our Poser camp was so much like South by Southwest for kids, and it was just such an undertaking that I think it was just time to focus on some of these things, like getting the videos up on Amazon Prime, sure, and just some other things. But I'll be every Friday this summer, starting June 8th at 10:30. I will personally lead a free family class at the new shops at Clear Fork.
Okay.
We're at Panther Island Pavilion a couple times, I think towards the end of the summer. And, we have a big educator training in Manitou Springs, Colorado, June 18th to 21st that is a retreat, but it's a teacher training. So chance for people to come learn our program and hopefully share this with their students or kiddos, wherever they might be. And again, always can go find us and watch our show, and that's on Prime Video, and we're really excited about that opportunity to, any child, anytime, anywhere can flick on Amazon, and Mr. Mateo can be in your living room doing poses with you, and we go on some pretty fun adventures, but always with a message that we've shared and talked about today.
Where can they find your books and merchandise?
Yeah, so also on Amazon, really all things Poserkids on Amazon. We've got a neat cover. I met an 11-year-old girl in Pittsburgh at the airport when I was coming back from a visit. I got to visit the Fred Rogers Center at St. Vincent's University in Latrobe. It was a really neat opportunity to kind of like a pilgrimage to Mecca for me, of this childhood hero of mine, someone that fairly or not, I at least draw comparisons to at times. And I met a girl named Sheila Williamson from Fort Myers, Florida, and I can't help myself. I saw a kiddo with a little ukulele, and we got to talking, and now fast forward about a month later, this week we have a cover she did on ukulele and mandolin, 11-year-old girl, super talented, that is our theme song. That'll be on iTunes and all the music platforms, and our content is pretty available out there. It's all on Amazon. We've got these neat little yoga socks too, that vinyasaks we're gonna call them, but they're like the little trendy little socks, like the designer socks everybody's wearing, but they have these little dots on the bottom, so you can kind of stick when you do your poses. And a lot of kids practice. I practice now and teach a lot of these classes with socks on, and so we got cool stuff out there, and I still live here in Funky Town, so we always try to have a strong presence here locally, and that's been all the way back to me showing up at the 6 Boys and Girls Clubs here in Fort Worth about 7 years ago and saying, hey, can I do yoga with your kiddos? And here we are today. So it's been neat to see that, and I really appreciate you having us on. And I think that again, anyone that is a dad knows that it's just what a special thing to be. That's kind of my favorite thing to be. So thanks for having me on. I know you feel likewise.
Excellent. I appreciate it, Mateo, and thank you so much. And then also, where can they contact you?
Yeah, just info@Poserkids.com, or if you want to reach me directly, Mateo, Mateo, @Poserkids. And just I want to give a shout out to Ashley Graybill, who is like, Poserkids got down to a point there where it was like me and Renee Zellweger and like the pink and purple fish, and like the mission statement. It was very Jerry Maguire-ish, and Ashley was Renee's character, and has just literally, she's one of the people that like a lot of really neat people that have become involved with Poserkids at different times, just believes in what we're doing and how we're doing it, most importantly. And I just wanted to really give Ashley a shout out, because she's really embodies the spirit of a lot of people like yourself and your wife and your daughter and my sister, and so many wonderful people in Fort Worth and the surrounding area that have, just as we've given a lot, I think have given a lot back, and we've always been very appreciative of that. And I get around like Tupac, so I'll be doing my thing. But we'd love for anyone that wants to come try out some classes this summer. We will be out at the shops at Clear Fork, kind of a standing weekly family class starting June 8th, 10:30, and shops at Clear Fork. So just a super neat new addition to Fort Worth. We have a Neiman's now, so God bless America. But thanks for having me on.
Right on. Thank you, sir. Fellas, thank you so much for tuning in. Please subscribe. Please share with your friends. Thank you so much for listening to the Circle of Dads podcast. It's our job to be there. It's our job to guide them. Love runs downhill. We chase those kids till the day we die. Thanks.